Welcome to the S.J. Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, and thanks for joining the S.J. Child Show today. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I'm really excited to start talking today, first off, and then we'll jump right into this conversation with Healey. I don't want to mess up your last name, so I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today.
Well, my name is Healey Eichard. Yeah, that's a hard one to pronounce. Both of those get mispronounced a lot. But yeah, I am a licensed counselor in Arkansas and have been working in mental health for about 17 years and enjoy that very much. I've written a few books, some to help kids and some to help adults. So, yeah.
And what population do you work with generally?
In my counseling practice, primarily adults. I came from where I was working all with children. And when I opened my own private practice, it's all population now. So, yeah. So I do have some children, just not as many as I used to have. So yeah, they're fun. They're a great clientele to work with.
Well, and I just love just tapping in. My head was just like, well, what did you learn from working with children for so long that helped you maybe apply some things to the adults you were working with?
That is a very good question. Yes. I don't know that I have an answer right off the top of my head, but that's a really good, because, I most likely did. But I did work a lot when I worked with children, I obviously worked with their parents also. And, there's something about children, they don't always know, like they come to therapy and they know what I'm there for, but I try to make it where it's not like it's a stigma of, something's terrible about them or whatever. And I do try to do the same thing with adults. It's, there's something about children that are just so life-giving and energetic, but it can also be very frustrating, too. If they're not applying what they're learning or whatever. So, there are some similarities, for sure. But I love both populations. They've got their, pros and cons, obviously, too. The children are fun because, I do a lot of play with them.
Yeah.
I'm just a young person at heart, so I love to do the play.
Oh, I love
stories,
play therapy.
The whole thing. Yeah.
I love everything about play therapy. I think that I'm so lucky. I have a stepdaughter that is older, in her 20s. And I also have a 12 and a 14-year-old of my own. And so I have this 12-year gap where I was able to learn so much as a stepmom and then apply what worked, take away what didn't, kind of those things. And especially with, our third, which is our baby, 12, the baby, right? But she, it was just exciting to pour into her all the things that I had learned throughout all of the time that I'd been parenting. And so it's lucky, I guess I feel lucky that I was able to change a lot of things along the way. Mm-hmm. What do you find as far as working with adults and maybe even with the parents of the children? Do you often find yourself setting them up with where's your mindset? And that's probably a really great big question that you start with.
Yes. Honestly, I tell parents that, they have to practice good mental health also, because the kids can only go so far if the parents are not healthy. So it's important that they can model a lot of those things that the kids need to learn. So I often, encourage parents, if they've got anxiety and they're practicing their skills, to bring their kids in and practice it with them because they need those skills. And we a few decades back, like we didn't teach kids a lot of coping skills. It was just like, pull up your boots and go, which is fine. That was, there's
Served its
definitely a
purpose.
time for that.
Yeah.
But we're in a different era now too. And kids really they're a lot more in touch with their feelings. Some, maybe not so much, that you have to teach that as well, but definitely coping skills, because adults need that as well. So maybe they're not practicing it as well. So I always encourage parents when they're going through counseling, like the things that they're learning and practicing and doing, like mindset, like breathing, like any coping skill they use, to help kids learn that that's what they can do too, and to let them practice it so they can see it and they'll use it more often.
Isn't that the truth too? We, like I had told you before, we have a son that's profoundly autistic, and he really taught us in the beginning, being non-speaking individual, how much more patient we had to be with, number one, taking with us specifically and individually, taking away our expectations of what this individual may or may not be able to do, especially the may not. I don't like to think that way anyways. I'm a really big fan of strength-based learning and strength-based kind of belief system. I believe the more that you believe in them, the more they'll show you, and the harder they'll push themselves outside of all of the limits to get to the next best thing they can do. And it's not a mindset that's like in our schools or, sometimes in our communities, things like that. What do you find now working with adults? What are I'm sure there's so many different types of, coaching and things, but what do you think is like a really big flub that people come to, and then they're like, reach out and say, I really need help diving through this?
Well, a lot of it is they may not realize how much their thinking affects their behaviors and their emotions too. And then how much they may make decisions based on emotion totally, or even partially. It's not really healthy either way. So coming to sometimes recognize that they can change it. If you have symptoms of anxiety or depression or whatever, that can be changed and worked on. It may not be easy, but they can do something about it. And that's because I always like when people actually make it into the counseling office for the very first time, because I think, okay, they've got some hope that something can change. Hopefully, if they don't, I help instill that. But they have to have it at some level that something can be different, or they wouldn't come into the counseling office unless they're just there to complain. But I'm not a really good counselor for just that. I am very strength based, and I'm very forward based. I don't care if the progress is slow, but we do need to be moving toward progress and not just staying in the place of complaint or nothing's going to change, or this is how it is. This is who I am. Yeah. I'm not a very good counselor for that. There are counselors like that, and I think that's good. There's a place for that, but I'm not that. I'm more of like, if you want to make changes in your life, I'll walk alongside you, help you make them, so that you can do it on your own next time.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that, because number one, there's never a one place fits everyone. One therapist does everything. And I think that it's very honest of you to say that, and to, let other people know, like, there are different therapists for different purposes. There's different modalities for different, uses and things. And so I think it's really easy, as just, probably some parents even set into this, like, one doctor for one thing. And it's really hard to get a bright and big picture when you only are looking through a teeny tiny whole. And so I often love for people to take that away and look for more resources, look for different ideas, look for opinions, that you might not have before. And something else you said, it was right there on the tip of my tongue.
Oh my gosh, I have that issue.
Isn't that the way it goes, right? Oh, it's good listening skills. I just got wrapped up in what you were saying. I didn't think about what I was going to say anymore. That's what I was going to say. I remember, I'm really lucky that this is going to sound so strange. So my husband, bless his heart, grew up in group homes, juvenile detention system. He was an undiagnosed autistic. He was diagnosed ADHD, but Asperger's, just very highly intelligent, which I think was part of the problem, highly gifted, and that derailed him from a lot of things. So, but to the point that he went through so much therapy and so many years and years and years that as he's come out 20 years later, 30 years later, he has the most insight of, number one, inside himself, because he's had to face and go through that for so many times and so long. But he's able to also help everyone else work through all of those things. And I remember in the beginning of our relationship, a book that reminded me of the conversation we were having called Who Moved My Cheese? Mm-hmm. And
they have a kid familiar. You didn't know. Yeah.
I love that. And it just really, like you were saying, like we've always tried to help our kiddos that can understand, do you want to stay in this victim mentality? Do you want to be the hero of your day or the victim of your day? Like, those are your choices, and your consequences will play out how you decide. It's like the video game of life, right? you choose the path, and then the consequences is there, and that's not your choice. So yeah, that's really tricky, but it really helped us to move past so many things that were holding us back. And we still mention it every once in a while, 20 years later,
Yeah, that's good. Well, just going back to the first one, there are all sorts of different therapists, just like doctors or whoever. Like, when you want to choose to go to somebody, you do need to find someone, and I'm glad your husband found somebody that fits well with their personality. So I'm not going to be, and I tell people this the first session, I'm not going to be a great fit for everybody, but don't give up on counseling just because the person isn't a good fit. To keep trying, because it takes that right relationship. And that's a lot about what the therapy is about, is the relationship. So you have to find someone that you connect with, that you're going to be able to build a trust with, so that you can allow them to challenge you a little bit, or at least provide some insight. So it's really neat that your husband did find somebody that was that for him, and that he can still carry a lot of that with him, those lessons. So that's really awesome. So I encourage people, don't give up just because you've hit a few bad or ones that didn't fit. Like there are a lot of good ones out there, and there are a lot of therapists out there. So definitely one that will fit all, personality types.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And, it goes the same with, it goes with everything. When we had in-home therapy for our son, same thing. Some therapists didn't challenge him the way he needed to be challenged, and we needed to change things. And it was scary to change things at first, because I think you go into it and they assign you someone and you're like, okay, they know what they're doing. They're the professional. I'm just the parent. They know exactly what they're doing. But I think that when you are you're in there with intent for your child's best interest, your own best interest, you will need to align your values and your comfortability levels with that person. And if they don't align, then you definitely, move forward and change things up. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your the books, if we could touch on them, and talk about kind of what gave you the idea, kind of what drove you into making a book. And then it's so very different. I've been in both worlds, writing an adult book and children's books. So how did that kind of, go be into play? Like, where did you decide to change gears and do that?
Well, I've enjoyed writing since I was a little kid, and I did write some stories when I was little. They weren't great by any means, but as great as my little mind could. And then as I came into the counseling field, I used books so much as reference for kids because I could introduce lessons that way or a topic that way, and they weren't like on defense about that. So in stories, you can kind of introduce topics that are a little bit easier to understand when it's someone else and not them. But so as I was doing counseling with the kids, I mean, I really wanted to write a children's book, and I'd tried several times, and just my ideas were kind of falling a little flat. At least I didn't like them. And my mom is from, she grew up in East Germany, and she would always tell me stories about the war there and just about growing up so poverty stricken, under communist rule. And she had told me this story about receiving a ball from her grandmother and just what that meant to her and her friends. And one day I was driving back from her house. I'm like, that would be a really good children's story. Just to kind of convey her gratitude that she has a child and still has today because of those times that she went through. So I attempted to write a story and through that story I did, because that's naturally where my mind goes. I do want it to have some teaching points, some lessons, so that if I used it in therapy, I could introduce some things. So there's a lot of emotions in the story, and it's a concept of forgiveness in the story. So as a friend betrays her, she has to work through forgiveness of that friend. And so it's a great way to introduce emotions. And so I kind of made, so as it was going through the illustration phase, it's a long
Beautiful
time.
illustrations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as it was going through it seems to take so long. I was creating some lesson plans for teachers or parents, like homeschool parents, and decided, gosh, I think I just will create a bunch of activities, and ended up doing all these activities into a book. So it came out with a companion activity book so that you can kind of reinforce some of the lessons about forgiveness and about emotions and how to handle those, and specifically about anger, because that's one of the big emotions in the book. So, yeah.
And what age group would that be like the best for?
There is a lot of text, so I think I gauged it like 6 to 9. I think that's the now somebody did just approach me of like, could you write a younger version of this?
Oh,
Yeah. And I was trying to think how to do that. I don't know, because I thought I could just create something for her, because she does great stories to kids. But when I read to younger kids, I'll just paraphrase. So I don't even think anything of that, regardless of what book I'm in. If it's younger, I just make up from the story or whatever. So yeah. So that's about the age group it is. And yes, I've gotten some good feedback from it. So yeah, it's been a fun little journey.
Children's books I have 7 children's books also. And I know they take so much time and illustrating and everything. And oh my goodness, I have a couple more I'm working on that I'm excited about. Mine are all about different special needs. So yeah, maybe I'll need to send them to you so that you can have those discussions.
Yes.
People, right? And that's the exact reason why I wrote them, was to start discussions in my children's classes, or maybe classes that they will be in the future, or classes from, children. They all need to learn how to have these discussions and how to create inclusion and kindness for those around them. And I really think that there's so much knowledge that can be learned from putting children into these situations and then allowing them sometimes to come up with the ideas. Oh, how should this page work out next, kind of thing, and really putting it in their hands to do so. You see that magic in those sparks, you know. I love that. I'm sure you see that in counseling a lot too. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say there's something really neat about stories that just stick with kids so they can remember, like we remember stories that we read as children and, you know, the concepts in those. So yeah, there's something that you can introduce almost any topic to a classroom through a story, and kids can always relate, as well as adults can always relate to it at some level or understand, you know, at some level, those concepts. So it's really neat.
I love that. What about, so when you started the adult book, let's talk about that and what that looks like. And it's geared towards obviously older groups. And then what types of topics did you indulge in that?
So the workbook I created is specifically for anxiety and worry. It's got some stuff in there about identity and panic as well. And so that is just to help people learn to walk. I kind of set it up like I do counseling, like kind of I go a certain way through topics in counseling. So some psychoeducational and then application. And so we set goals at the first. So that's kind of how the book is set up, is try to help people like walk through and actually apply the principles. I am like this. I read a lot of books and, you know, the knowledge is helpful, but unless I actually apply the knowledge, it's not really beneficial. So that's why I created a workbook rather than just a book,
I like that.
so that people could actually like work on it. Because if you really want to work on anxiety and worry, there are some practical steps that you can do to manage it well. Now, we're not going to get rid of anxiety completely, because it's for our good that we have some, but we need to manage emotions well. And so hopefully my book can help people do that.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I am was a divorced. Well, I wasn't divorced. Was go back anyways. I was a child of divorced parents, only child, and I had super bad anxiety growing up. I wrote a book about it. One of my children's books is about anxiety as well. I have overcome that anxiety. But you're exactly right. Am I free from anxiety? Absolutely not. And in fact, I think I've developed new anxieties over some of the other ones that had bigger, they were just bigger parts of my life that I hadn't faced or looked at or been able to work through. And so when I was able to do that, those didn't affect me anymore. But yes, I like the fear of going through tunnels. Oh my goodness. I got through it and I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that I would be able to do that. But I mean, I think that facing some of our fears sometimes to work through anxieties is magical and can really grow us in places we had never, ever anticipated. So what are some practices that you have in the workbook or that you give adults to help them maybe identify their anxiety? Because I think that's probably a good place to start, is identifying that.
Well, first I try to help people see like what's actually going on in the brain when we experience anxiety, and to learn that anxiety can be, and if we let it be, it can be a good thing in our life. I mean, we need it. They're like fear, like it can be in one children's book I read a lot. It's called Fear Can Be a Friend or Fear Can Be a Foe. It's a friend when it keeps us from danger. So if we're walking across a busy intersection, like we need to have a little bit of fear in that so that we'll look both ways, that we'll run quickly or,
Mhm.
whatever. But if we're like tunnels, for example, like that would be then our brain is triggering when it's not supposed to because, well, unless we had a traumatic incident, that might be like we might be a little cautious. But knowing that it is a safe situation, our brain is just triggering at the wrong time. So we have to teach it to not trigger, that this is actually safe. And that's what anxiety is doing. It's telling you a situation is unsafe. And so we have to use our cognitive minds to go, is that unsafe? Or can it be safe? Or is just my fear? Because sometimes if we don't address it, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and spreads to other things. So like you might start off afraid of, I don't know, a tunnel, and then you're afraid of any, inside space. And then you might be so afraid you don't even leave the house. Like that's like it keeps going down to places that may have nothing to do with how it originally started. So it's really important for people to work on their fears so that it doesn't spread and get worse, because you'll see like anxious children they'll create more and more, and they'll be scared of everything. So it is really important to teach our brain what's safe and what's not. And so it isn't safe to cross a busy intersection, but it is safe to jump into a pool if you know how to swim. So, but it's unsafe to jump into a pool if you don't know how to swim.
Mhm.
So that's where our cognitive abilities, our executive function needs to be working well so that we can actually make good decisions for ourselves and not let the anxiety make the decisions for us. Because anxiety says, run, get out of here, don't do that activity, when it might really be a safe activity.
Yeah.
Or it can
Oh,
be made safe.
it's tricky, isn't it? I think that you're right about like our executive functioning being able to kick in, and with some of us that have, kiddos that can't manage that, it is scary, and you have to be extra aware, even extra attentive to teach them maybe extra skills around those things. I always have the inputs about my neurodiverse community that, it's so important. I think that I was thinking the other day how tricky it is that I want to, start these programs and do these things with my son, but will he be able to blah, 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 blah. So when we set out for those types of adventures, what are some steps you might give I can measure and tangibly take for myself to walk myself through getting into a situation I might be fearful or, of anxiety filled?
Mm-hmm. What have you done in the past to get through those things,
Well,
to manage that?
that's a great question. I
Sorry,
guess
that's a therapy question.
my husband, I
But
love my husband. My husband's he's my best mental partner ever. And he always tells me, your anxiety is only the time between when it doesn't happen and it happens, and you're not knowing what's, the unknowing. And he's like, that's just wasteful energy. Don't waste your time there. And so, I mean, he's very logical, and I'm able to see the logic. I might not be the logical one. I'm the emotional one, but I can see the logic at least. And so I'm able to kind of maybe take some steps and calm myself down. Sometimes just even taking risks, I think is healthy. And I find myself like, oh, of course I love to take these walks. What was I thinking? Why haven't I done this in so long? Kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, we get into our routines, into our, in our head sometimes that, but yeah, we have to just take a step back and, like you said, find out what has worked before.
That's one
Mm.
of the biggest things, is find out what have we done before, and we definitely want to keep using that. But if thinking about what is going on in our body when we're feeling anxious about something, so it's not just our thoughts, but our body's reacting also. So first, we have to get our body to a calmer state so that we can actually
Yeah.
think logically. So deep breathing helps with that. Grounding techniques help with that. I always encourage people to have some good, healthy statements around fear or
Mm.
around something that makes you anxious, so that you can use some of those. Like, I've done this before. It's safe. It's good for me to be uncomfortable. And it is good for us. And the more that you do the uncomfortable things, the more your brain learns, I can do these things and they are safe activities, or can be made
Mm.
safe. So, yeah, so those are some things. And then teaching our children those things too, of like what's happening in our body, what's happening in our thoughts, and then we're going to do it anyway, regardless of how we feel. But we definitely want to calm our bodies down first before we do it. We don't want to go in a full, because that might be teaching the brain something else. If we're going all super, hopped up, then our brain's not it's just in survival mode. So we have to calm our bodies down first, and then do whatever that we're afraid of. I'm 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 a big adventure seeker. I'm very afraid of heights. And I know why I'm afraid of heights, because heights can be it can be dangerous to be up on a side of a mountain or something like that. Could be very dangerous. But I evaluate some activities to say, can I do that in a safe way? So I've jumped out of an airplane. I've jumped out of a helicopter. Like, I've done things that are, and my family thinks I'm crazy, because I do like to do stuff as long as it can be made safe. So I will ride a roller coaster all day long as I've got the seatbelt on. Now, I'm not going to go riding it without the harness. I mean, that would be nuts. And would
Yeah.
teach my brain that roller coasters are dangerous. But I can teach my brain that roller coasters are safe. I mean, as safe as they can be,
Yeah.
but you know, as long as you got the seatbelt on, and or you're jumping out of a plane, you've got the parachute connected to you. Like, those are things like are logically good. And I like stepping outside my comfort. Like, I'd like to be uncomfortable, because I feel like I'm growing when I do
Mhm.
that, and that I'm teaching myself I can do things even though I'm afraid of them. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes if you see me high up on something, like I'm clinging to the side, like I'm some kind of crazy person, but I'm still doing it. Yeah, I, when my son was about 6 months old, I was, I was in the army and got stationed in Naples, Italy. And one of the first things that we did on a tour was climb Mount Vesuvio. So
Wow.
this volcano in Naples. So my son was 6 months old, so I strapped him to my back, and we climbed up the mountain. And now I was scared, because it's not just me. I have my
Right?
little son. So, like, this side was here and I was right up against it. So I'm not going to do something crazy, but I am going to step outside and do things that bring me joy, but also help me grow as a person.
Mm. I love that. And I'm sure that your kiddo looks up to you so much, and probably gave the same wonderful traits to them through your good examples and things like that. I love that.
No, well, thanks.
What are you working on next? Is there anything else you're going to be doing, or where can people find you? Give us all the good stuff.
Well, I am currently working on a book called The Anxious Little Goat. I'm in Arkansas, so I
Oh,
have a small farm here and we have goats, and I love them. They are so
I love goats.
therapeutic. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're annoying, hard to control sometimes, but they bring me a lot of joy. And so I really wanted to write a story about goats. But of course, I ponder on things forever because I'm like, oh, I don't know what's a good story. But I ended up doing a story about a mom and her baby that was just born, and he's just scared of like everything, that he's not going to
Life.
learn stuff, like he doesn't know how he's going to grow up and be a goat, like how to do all the goat things. And so mom basically reassures him throughout the book and teaches him the things about goats. And my goal was to also help kids learn about goats. So if they get a goat, that they can learn all the things that they need to know.
That's great.
Yeah. So
I love
that's
animals.
my
I have a
project.
friend who does donkey, like she works with donkeys and she'll bring them to, and she does like a talk about how donkeys are so their relationships are so interesting that they'll sometimes they'll let people in, they'll bully and kick people out. They're just very like intense that way, and so fascinating.
Animals are great.
Yeah,
You just pick one animal and learn all about it. It's quite fascinating
love that.
to all for all the things. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I've been working on. I hope that we're almost done with illustrations, and my layout designer, whatever's working on the cover. So I'm hoping by the beginning of the year
Oh, that's
it'll be out.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. Thank you.
Excited about that for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a website we can go to and learn more about you, connect with you, all of that good stuff?
My website is written by Healey, and my name is spelled Healey, and .com. And I have on there like more stuff than you'd probably want to know about me or anything else. But I do have a page where you can actually create an account and have access to all sorts of mental health resources, so that so people can have access to. And I'm adding stuff all the time. Like I love creating resources for people, just simple things that they can use to, make improvements in their life. I want people to live healthy lives. There's so much more joy in living healthy. Although healthy is hard. It
Right?
feels like
Oh, I love that.
that's
Is
what
that
keeps us
right?
from being healthy is, yes, that is correct. Thank
Perfect.
you very much. Yeah.
Yay. Oh, I love this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great.
Thank you, Sarah.
Definitely go to writtenbyhealey.com. That's Healey. So you get that correct spelling in there. It's just been such a pleasure to get to know you, and I want to stay in touch so that we can,
Yes.
find out what's going on and hear more about the goats, and I can introduce you to my farm animals who are going to jump up on the table here. Oh my goodness! I guess he
Look,
really is. He
welcome.
really does want
Hello.
an introduction. This is
Oh, how
Jack.
pretty. Look at those eyes. How pretty.
Oh, thanks. Oh my goodness, you silly goose. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I really look forward to staying in touch.
Great. I do too, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.